Hey everyone, welcome to our final episode of SketchUp Talk Season 3. That's crazy. Time has flown.
A lot of episodes.
For this episode, we are going to switch it up a little bit, as you can see. We're going to get to know the guy behind that 3D mouse, our live streams, and pretty much almost all of our learning content. Since we are focusing on getting to know the rest of the SketchUp team on this season of SketchUp Talk, it's only fitting that we sit down with you, Aaron. And before we get started, I'll introduce myself. I'm Kara, and I'm on the marketing team.
Hi, Kara.
Hi, Aaron.
Thanks for having me.
So this is probably kind of weird for you. I'm interviewing you.
It is. I'm so uncomfortable right now.
So, all right. Well, I have to know, since you're so good at SketchUp, how did you get started, and what's your background?
So I actually started using modeling software in high school.
Oh.
My dad had a company that made architectural engineering software. They made 3D models that would help to generate load through the building and size members, and it was very
Wow.
It did numbers and stuff, and me and math aren't the best friends, but he brought it home to show me, here's what I do for a living. And I played with it a little bit and drew something and actually caught a bug or two in the software. It was new software, so it was not a weird thing, but about a week later, he asked if I wanted a part-time job to go in and test software. So that's where it kind of started. That's where I started using 3D modeling software. So I did that for years and years. I moved from testing to tech support and ended up in training. Ended up doing documentation, and it was a small startup, so everybody wore multiple hats. And anything that wasn't programming, I kind of ended up with the toe in at some point.
Right.
But one of the things I did along with that is I did comprehensive comparisons of competitor software. So I learned probably just shy of 20 different drawing packages throughout my tenure there, and one of them was SketchUp.
Interesting. That's a lot.
And yeah, it was a lot. So I got pretty good at trying to figure out how software worked, just well enough to know what was good about it and what we could do to take the best parts of that. And SketchUp just stuck. I mean, we hear that all the time. Something about it. It was easy. It was playful. The learning experience was good, even though it was learning on my own. But yeah, just a couple of videos. I think the how-to videos is what I started with. And I got to admit, for the first 3 years I used it, I was probably not a very good user. I knew a handful of tools and just enough to make things kind of look like I wanted them to.
That's really hard to believe.
I was in a bubble, I didn't know anybody else who knew how to use it. And it was only years later where the company I was working with started making extensions for SketchUp that the company I was with, Keymark and SketchUp, were both in Boulder, so we actually ended up meeting.
Nice.
And that's when I started really doing my best to learn more and more. So
Awesome. So
yeah.
So you kind of covered what you did. What do you do now? You kind of touched on it.
Oh man. So my official title is Content Marketing Manager, which is not too far from your title.
Right.
So what the biggest thing that I'm responsible for is the less structured recurring learning content. So we do have things like the campus, and we do have an on-site training program where people can come to bigger companies. But what I do is I create recurring training content where people can learn to it's not intended to be comprehensive start to finish, but kind of add to their existing skills and kind of take it a little bit further. So
Nice.
That's kind of where what I'd say.
Well, so you do a lot of learning content. How are you trying to elevate that experience for people? Why do you think it's important?
I think one of the good things about SketchUp is one of the spots that SketchUp struggles with is it's very easy to get started in SketchUp. Like you watch a couple of videos, most people get that line tool, rectangle tool, push pull, and they're good to go, and that's how you start, and it's awesome. But I think a lot of people stall out after that.
Yeah.
They don't know what the next step is, and that's kind of the people who I'm trying to target the most. We do this a couple different ways. One is we come up with these little short workflows called skill builders. So once a week we release this, and it's 10 minutes or less usually, and it's just about how to do a piece of a workflow. So it's not the whole thing. It's not how to draw a whole house, but maybe how to draw a doorknob using some specific tools.
Right.
And then we also do live streams. And the idea of the live stream is to kind of show just SketchUp in a full workflow. The live stream's about 3 hours. So I usually try to pick a model that I can get done to at least a halfway decent level in 3 hours.
Which is hard.
It is. But the idea there is to show that comprehensive, start with nothing, end up with something, and here's the buttons we push along the way.
So for people that have particular workflows that they're doing, they want to learn specific skills, how do you suggest that they suggest learning material to you?
So I monitor YouTube comments like an insane person. I look at the comments in YouTube probably a couple times a day.
That's great.
Not that there's no pride in that, it's not doing anything for me, but I really want to stay plugged into it because the last thing that it takes me time and energy to create content. So I don't want to go out and make content that nobody's going to consume. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to me that we do that. So I do try to look, and I would say we do get a fair share of people going, I want to know how to do this, or I'm struggling with this. Yep. Some people go there for tech support. It's not a good place to get tech support.
Exactly.
So if you've ever said, well, he never got back to me on how to do this, that's not actually what I aim for. I do try to pull comments out of there to make videos about, but I don't directly usually answer questions unless it's related to the video.
Right.
The other place to reach out is the forum. So we have just an incredibly vibrant forum, lots of users. So if you ever put an idea up but haven't heard anything back, or maybe you want an answer to an actual question, the forum is an incredible place to go. Yeah. So anybody who's using SketchUp should probably be a member of the forum as well.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of a curveball, and I know you've talked about it on other podcasts, but you're a big part of 3D Basecamp.
Yes.
You do a lot of the content. 3D Basecamp is about learning. Why do you think it's important for SketchUppers to go?
Well, I think one of the big things about being a SketchUp user is I think a lot of times people who are SketchUp users end up on islands, kind of, working in a professional place where they use other software. And we hear all the time about people who are advocates for SketchUp, and they push and, let's try SketchUp for this. Let's do SketchUp here. And a lot of times you can be the only one doing that. So sometimes it feels like you are alone in your SketchUp walk. So I think Basecamp's huge because you go there and that's everybody. Everybody there is a SketchUp advocate. Everybody there is loving SketchUp and wants to learn more. You can get some of that on the forum. You can get that through watching the live streams and talking to people in chat. That's all good stuff, and absolutely should do that. You definitely should do that. But there's nothing beats that in face-to-face, hanging out with those people, having lunch, talk about that stuff. And then the other thing is that there's people teaching there who are practicing professionals. So they don't actually do classes outside of coming to Basecamp. So the only way for you to plug into some of these professionals who are doing maybe the same thing that you are is to go to Basecamp and take their class.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So now we're going to kind of go back to the whole format of this show, the whole format of this season.
How do you SU? All right.
So first SketchUp model.
I was thinking about this because I was worried that one day this tables would turn and I'd have to answer some of these questions.
Darn, I thought it was going to catch you off guard.
But I'm struggling so much to think about what that first model was. I remember, because I'm sure I followed some tutorials and made something, a doghouse or something like that, but I really don't remember it. The one that I remember where I got into it and spent hours on and really worked on was a model of a robot. It kind of looked like Iron Giant, like that kind of thing. It's kind of cartoony and it was really cool. But I know, like I said, I didn't know how to soften and smooth anything. So if I ever created geometry and then it broke, I would delete it and redraw it so it would be soft and smooth. I didn't know how to group very well, so it was a big mess of connected geometry. And
see where you can go, everyone that's listening.
If I was to go grab it, I think there's some parts that I'd be like, oh, that was kind of cool. But I think for the most part, I'd be like, ooh, no, take my name off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, what's your most recent SketchUp model? I think I know the answer to this one.
Well, I haven't touched SketchUp since Friday, so it was the Burrow. that I did for the live model.
Okay, that makes sense.
So yeah, what were you thinking?
The Lego one.
Oh yeah, so my personal was definitely, I have not gone back to SketchUp for personal modeling since I did the Lego Millennium Falcon. It broke me a little bit.
It looked like a big project. How long did that take you?
On the calendar, it was probably 3 months. Wow. That wasn't working daily though. I mean, there's sometimes where I took weeks off, and then other times where I got, usually a couple hours a week. But yeah, that was time consuming. But yeah, that was the last thing I modeled for fun.
Right. Well, so what's your most impactful SketchUp model?
That's hard. I think there's a couple things I can think of. One is, I think like a lot of SketchUp users, I've modeled every house I've ever lived in since I started using SketchUp.
That's cool.
So I've had a lot of things where I wanted to paint a painting for our living room in our house we lived in a little while ago. And I wanted to do like a big painting. I'd never painted anything like this. I think the canvas is like 5 feet wide.
Oh, wow.
So I want to do like a huge painting.
So you're a painter too?
That's something I do on the side. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. It's doesn't get as much time as I'd like, but it's a fun thing to do. But I wanted to create my own artwork for the living room, and I wanted it to be big. And I was talking to my wife about it, and I'm just in the living room like, well, what do you think, 5 feet's too big? And she's like, I don't know. So I went in and modeled our living room. I got a couch that was about the same as the couch in our living room, colored it the same color, and then I drew a couple different canvas sizes on the wall and used layers to switch them on and off to show here's what they would look like.
That's cool.
And that was kind of cool because my wife's like, oh yeah, I see what you're thinking now. And it was a cool opportunity for me to take what was in my head that I could see and share it with somebody else.
So what size did you pick?
I went to the big one.
Nice.
I worked real well in that house, and now every time, well, the 2 times we moved since then, we've had to find a place to put it because it's still big. It hasn't shrunk over time. Yeah.
What's the best and worst SketchUp model that you've done or that you've seen?
Ooh, seen. I think to go back to something we've talked about already, the Lego model was, there's a special pride I have for it because it was just so big and took so long. So I really think that'll always kind of stand out as a special one for me because it was very gratifying to get done because there was honestly a couple times during it that I was like, nah, I'm good. I don't have to take this any further. I'm finished. Because it took so long. It was very time consuming.
It looked very detailed.
Oh yeah. I mean, 7,500 components, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, having to rotate, and it was crazy. So that was probably the best thing. As far as worst, I have to go with this, and it's a public shame, but when I was modeling the Notre Dame,
I remember this.
I was an hour into the model, which was most of the front tower, and it was really going well because I was working off of just photos and didn't have any plans or anything like that, or maybe I did. I can't remember, but I got an hour in, and something happened, and I lost the model, and I hadn't saved. No, it was so bad. And the model turned out okay. So I can't complain about the final model.
Yeah.
But the process in getting there still a little bit sore from it.
Still haunts you.
Oh man. Well, yeah, it literally haunts me because people are on the forum all the time going, save. Did you save? You need to save.
That's true.
To the point that my new scale figure actually is wearing a T-shirt that says save on it. So
that's pretty funny.
Maybe that was impactful too.
It's impactful.
Oh man.
So you see a lot of SketchUp models, I'm sure. What do you see users doing wrong?
This is always tough because there's probably a handful of things. Some of them could be technical, like using groups or components. Some people get into, mouse usage, click, release, move, rather than click and drag. And I think that stuff's important. Mm-hmm. But I think when you're learning a software, one of the big things where people get stuck is with being in their own heads and being afraid. it sounds so silly to say being afraid of software, but I remember teaching, it wasn't SketchUp, it was different software, but years and years back, teaching somebody, and every time I tell them to do something, they go, why?
Oh, God.
I'm like, well, because this is the next step in the process. Well, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to click, and then it's going to do the thing. Well, why am I doing that thing? And it was frustrating, but at the same time, like, man, what happened to this person that they're this afraid to try? Because I'll say that most of the time, you're only a Control Z away from undoing whatever you do.
Exactly.
So don't be too scared.
Yeah.
Yes, there's always a chance that something could blow up. Your computer could shut down. You could whatever. You could lose something. But if that's going to happen, it's going to happen anyhow. Save regularly. That's what I learned.
Yep.
And just try it. If you don't know what you're doing, in SketchUp especially, just go for it. Play. Do a save as and have a sandbox version to play in. Don't be afraid to try stuff, because I think that's something that a lot of people get stuck on, is they try to be perfect. And the other thing, since I'm answering twice now, is when you first start to learn SketchUp, don't pick something super important or challenging to do.
Yeah.
Don't try to model the home you grew up in and you have fond memories of. Don't model your dream house. Don't, start with the dog's dream house or a tree house or something like that. Start with something that you can screw up, walk away from, and then do it again.
Yeah.
I think that there's an emotional connection when you start designing. And I think that if you're designing something you really care about, it can make it harder to let it go if it doesn't work or something like that, or you can fight it. Oh, it's not perfect. This is supposed to look like this.
Right.
And that can be rough. Nobody's going to get it perfect on their first try. Mm-hmm. So save your dream house for 2 or 3 months after you've been using SketchUp, and then dive into that. Don't do it on your first one.
That's a great tip, because a lot of users do try to get it perfect on that first try. And I will tell you from experience, I mean, I just learned how to use SketchUp this year, or last year, technically.
Yeah, it's
new year.
We're new.
And it was very hard, because you want to make everything perfect, but you just got to go for it.
Well, and I think that's something that I struggle with too. So, I mean, we're being totally open. I am a bit of a perfectionist when I work on stuff, and some things, especially the live models, have been very good about me just kind of, nope, let it go.
Yep.
Good enough is good enough, and keep moving forward rather than trying to work on details. There's nothing that helps you move yourself forward through design like 200 people watching and commenting on what you're doing.
And telling you every little thing you're doing wrong.
Exactly. So it's actually been really good for me, because one of the things that I've gotten stuck on in the past is, and I think this goes back from all my years of being a software user, tester, tech support, is if something doesn't go right, I try to go figure out why. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just kind of who I am too. I like to understand how things work.
Yep.
And that can be a problem, because sometimes it's going to take twice as long to figure out why it does it as to just do it over.
Doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's definitely something I'm getting better at, thanks to my current position.
I'm sure a lot of users can relate to that. So
yeah, it's rough. But it's real. It's very
real life.
Yeah.
Well, that was awesome. And thank you for now letting me interview you. I know you're used to being in this position.
It's been fun.
So thank you, Aaron, for taking the time.
Absolutely.
And thanks to all of our users.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.